Hello, everyone. Pastor Jose here, lead pastor, Cherry Christian Rebel Center Church. I'm in Oxford, Missouri. Pastor Abby wanted me to use 5 minutes to discuss the high priest garments and the portion that we didn't get to basically talk about when we were talking about the tabernacle. Now, it's very important to discuss the tabernacle before you go into the high priest because the high priest doesn't have anything to do unless he has a tabernacle. Um, and so that's why we needed to talk about the tabernacle first. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. All right. I'm going to pull up a picture here of what the garments look like. This one's pretty simple. Um, and it kind of gives the breakdown. So um, we can find what we need in Exodus 28. And so before that, I'm just going to go give you a brief, brief background, right? So what do we have, right? We have the importance of understanding the tabernacle, and then after that, um, the order of the priests, right? So the Levites themselves were chosen by God. They're his people. And in out of the Levites, the name Levite, which I guess I want to make sure you guys understand that Levite is um, Aaron's great or grandfather, if I'm not mistaken. And so, the rest of the Levites operate in a different capacity. The priests are Aaron's lineage. Um, but nonetheless, the 12 tribes of Israelites, the Levites don't get an inheritance. And God says, I am their inheritance. And God says, I have taken them for myself. They're mine. And so that's in Numbers chapter 8, verse 14, and Deuteronomy 18 and 1. I butchered that up real bad. And so that's the background real quick. So then let's go to Exodus 28. And in Exodus 28, we have the full garments of the high priest. And so put those back on the screen real quick. Um, this, like I said, this is not the best. There's better pictures out there, but this one will do. So there's the gold plate, holy to the Lord. It's what it says on it. It's the turban that the high priest puts on his hats. The two onyx stones are worn on his shoulders. And then there's the tunic underneath, right? The ephod is it's the basically that whole piece right here that the arms and the torso fit into. Then there's the sash that holds it all together. So the sash that holds it all together, the tunic that he wears, his undergarments that are white. The then the biggest, most attractive part of the high priest's wear is the breast piece that's in the center. The 12 stones with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. Also, on his shoulder, he carries the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. Then towards the bottom of the garment, blue robes, and then the bells and pomegranates that we talked about briefly in the lessons a couple weeks ago. Those bells are ringing, and it's not jingle bells. um, so real quick. So in Exodus 28, you'll get the full breakdown of everything I just briefly discussed. Let's take the biggest piece that you have here. The high priest is literally going in to the um, holies of holies, and he is carrying the he is carrying on his chest, he is carrying literally the 12 tribes of Israel before his own heart. And that breastplate itself is symbolic of the only reason why he gets to go in there is because of those 12 tribes. He is putting them ahead of himself. That's the reason why he's going there. He's there to consult God on what God has for the nation, right? Because in the holies of holies, he goes in for what? He goes in to consecrate the people for that year. And he's going to the Ark of the Covenant, right? And so the Ark of the Covenant is he's going towards the to sprinkle over the mercy seat. Okay. And I think I'll pull up a picture on that here shortly. Because I didn't do one earlier. So when you go into the holies of holies, you're also going in there with the weight of the 12 tribes of Israel and their sin over his shoulders as well. So on the stones over his shoulder are carved the 12 tribes of Israel. And instead of reading left to right, you read right to left in Hebrew. And so over his shoulders are as well the tribes carved. And so I'm gonna go ahead and pull you up see if I can pull you up an Ark of the Covenant picture. Um, Picture that shows the mercy seat. Um, that way you can um see it. Or okay, here's an Amazon image right here that would probably show it very well. Now, one of the things that's so important to understand, verse Exodus 28, 29, it says, so Aaron shall carry the names of the sons of Jacob in the breastpiece of a judgment over his heart when he enters the holy place to bring them into continuing remembrance before the Lord. That's who he is representing before God. And then it says, um, in the breastpiece, verse 30, in the breastpiece of judgment, you shall put Urim lights and Thummim perfections to be used for determining God's will in in a matter. They shall be over Aaron's heart whenever he goes before the Lord, and Aaron shall always carry the judgment verdict judicial decisions of the sons of Israel over his heart before the Lord. Now, this is interesting, right? Um, and I'm going to get into that because that's so important to talk about. The reason why I say this is because a lot of speculation and a lot of um, things are thought and said. But here, real quick, let me show you the Ark of the Covenant, and then over the Ark of the Covenant, you're gonna see there's the Ark of the Covenant, and so the high priest would stand here, and he would sprinkle over the mercy seat here, the center of the lid of the Ark of the Covenant. Here are the cherubims, and he would sprinkle the blood of that um, atonement sacrifice right there. Okay. So right in the center. That's what he was going to do there every year. And the Shekinah glory would completely overtake that holies of holies place. So those bells that he has are crucial because as long as they're jingling and ringing, we know the high priest is alive. The presence of God hasn't killed him. He hasn't done anything that God has deemed unholy in him and completely taken it. And again, when you go to the breast piece, um, the breastplate, that breastplate is what the reason why he goes in there. And so that is what is literally protecting him and sparing him. Um, and so you can almost grab the priest's garments and compare them to the armor of God. But obviously, uh, the armor of God is a little different. Here are the different pieces. This was my Christmas gift. But anyways, um, and so you see that there. You see that there now. Okay, I gotta move on. So let's talk about Urim and Thummim, and those lights. You don't see them here. Now, um, this is where a lot of people say basically they're a white and a black stone. And some people will say that they cast ballots. Basically, it's like casting ballots or consulting oracle stones, or you know um the question was asked by the leader, and so the high priest would go in there and God would manifest the decision through that. And so I don't agree with that theory in the sense that um now you're basing stuff on luck or whatnot. We see how God has dealt with Moses and Aaron in a supernatural way. And we see how he deals and he speaks to him through the burning bush that doesn't, deteriorate. So there's no way, why would God go to these stones? uh Specifically, but it says very clearly in verse 30 that the high priest would carry them, and they would be right here, right above his heart, right in the back, so you wouldn't see them. They were between his the breastplate and the tunic, I mean, sorry, between the breastplate and the ephod, and they were above his heart. Now, if you look, it says in verse 30, the breastpiece of judgment you shall put in the room lights, and the throne perfections to be used for determining God's will in the matter. They shall be over Aaron's. Now, this is what the word says. They shall be over Aaron's heart whenever he goes before the Lord, and Aaron shall always carry the judgment of the sons of Israel over his heart before the Lord. So I would say it was more of symbolic of a yes or no, something that he had the choice. He had the choice of the people over his heart, or he had to choose the people over him. That's where I think their symbology is there. Now, one of the things that the scholars don't, each of the tribes of Israel on the breastplate here, all 12, these are 12 specific stones that are on there, jasper, and you can read more about them, Exodus 28. And then later on in Exodus, towards the end of Exodus, why these stones? This is Pastor Jose again. This is my theory. Okay, because this is highly contested and everybody has their own opinions on this. This is my theory. When you're there in the holies of holies, the lampstand is on the other end. You might be carrying the incense as the high priest. Basically, remember said the incense represents the prayers of the saints. Um, and now the Shekinah glory of God is what's literally gonna manifest and light this place. There's nothing else. The lampstands on in the outer, um, in the outer tent of the meeting. So in the holies of holies, the light of God is what has to bring, light to see. And now each of these stones, all of them, including the Humim and Tumim, uh, uh, are going, Urim and Tumim, they're going to reflect the light of God. Okay. And the high priest has to be able to grab what is about to be exposed when God's glory reflects upon those stones. And in there might be a message or an answer from God on a question that Moses or a leader had asked. And now the high priest can go deliberate. So it's the manifested glory of God that you're about to witness when you go in there. Okay. And so that's what I see. These stones, all these stones, everything on in his and lights up like a Christmas tree is what I could imagine at the presence of God, right? God is the one that's the source of all light. Everything that is light. There's no darkness, okay? So that is um um the priest's garments. Now, understand this. Every high priest after Aaron, who his lineage was the only one that could be high priests, started to degrade. The consecration started to lift. And the question is why? Why, after so much, where does the high priest lineage go? That we don't get anything until I can't go into Abby's lesson, so I won't go. But what happens? I'm going to tell you what happens, what gets us to where Pastor Abby's going to be teaching, right? And it takes us to Deuteronomy 31, 14 through 19. The heart of the people of Israel. The Lord said to Moses, behold, the time for you to die is near. Call Joshua, present yourselves at the tent of the meeting, okay? And present yourself at the tent of meeting. And so I may commission him. Okay. So Moses and Joshua went to the and presented themselves at the tent of meeting. Then the Lord appeared in the tent in a pillar of a cloud, and the pillar of the cloud stood beside the doorway of the tent. The tent. And the Lord said to Moses, behold, you are about to lie down in death with your fathers, and the people will rise and play the prostitute, commit apostasy with foreign gods of the people of the land where they go to be among them. They will abandon, turn away from me, and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my anger will be kindled and burn against them in that day, and I will abandon and turn away from them and hide my face from them. They will be among us. They will be devoured, and many evils and troubles will come on them, so that they will say in that day, is it not because our God is not among us that these evils have come on us? But I will certainly hide my face from them in that day because of all the evil which they will do, for they will turn to other gods to worship lifeless idols, to honor homemade relics. Now then, write this song for yourselves and teach it to the sons of Israel. Put it in their mouths, so that this song may be a witness for me against the sons of Israel. A witness for me. That's God saying, this song will be evidence that I told them what was to come. Their hearts, Moses is like, God's telling Moses, you haven't even left yet. You haven't died. You're about to die. Okay. And Joshua is about to do amazing things. But I'm telling you right now, their hearts are already going to turn. And so, if the hearts of the people are turning, if the reason why the high priest goes to the mercy seat, goes to the holies of holy, is to bring consecration for the people, to atone for the people, to atone for the nation, if when he goes in there, the Shekinah glory and the light of God is supposed to come over the breastplate of his tunics, of his garments, and minister and give him the ability to go back and speak to the people what God has given. If that's what this whole thing is about, if the people's heart's not in it, do you think God's going to speak? He's not. And that's what he says. Guess what? I'm not gonna be there. The whole point of the tabernacle that was erected was because God said, I want to be with my people. I want to abide among them. I want to be among them. I took them out of Egypt. I separated them completely from the wickedness that Abraham lived in. And then I spared them from the destruction and the contamination of Sodom and Gomorrah. And now, after all these years, I have a nation that I can consecrate to me, but they don't want it. Okay. So, guess what happens? If their hearts are gone, slowly the same thing happened to the priests. Their heart and fire was gone. When Aaron leaves, before, because Aaron dies, if I'm not mistaken, Aaron dies before Moses. And so you got to understand, like, the degradation continues to happen. The priorities, invasion, victory after victory of the people of God, and they start adapting the things that God is giving them to destroy and overcome. They start bringing that into their lives. And so the law becomes literally ceremonial. The law becomes tradition. It becomes a thing that happens. Okay. And so this is going to lead to what happens next and where Pastor Abby is supposed to take over, okay? So let's look at the scriptures, all right? Let's look at just the chronicle order, Genesis, the beginning, the creation, mankind, what happens, the establishment, how God calls and separates a holy people, holy nation from one man that decides to believe and starts establishing and putting order to bring redemption to mankind, the lineage of Jesus Christ. Then he exodus, literally brings them out of bondage, out of sin, out of slavery, out of Pharaoh's control, the devil, Satan's control. And then we go into Leviticus and Numbers, and God establishes, ordains, gives instruction, and they follow and they execute. Then God starts giving them victory and starts giving them the land that was promised to the fathers, and those fulfillment of scripture starts happening. And then you go into Joshua. I said, okay, we're in Joshua. Now you go into Judges. And so now in Judges, we see the breakdown, the victory that God did not give them, or the lands that the people that they did not let them, God did not give them the green light to overcome or fight or beat before Joshua closes his eyes, are now in Judges, the ones that God uses to prove and test their heart and show them that what he told Moses was going to come to pass. And that's exactly what happens. These guys start coming and going, and battles are fought, and they have victories, but they infiltrate and they adopt their gods and they adopt their ideologies, and they start prostituting everything that God is giving them. And then the next thing you know, God had the high priests no longer bring presence or ministering in the presence of God, because the presence of God is not there. And so God has to use judges that are coming to at moments to deal with things that need to be fixed, but they themselves don't lack authority because they're not of the royal line of priesthood of Aaron. And the ones that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we see that in Eli. Okay. And Samuel, where Samuel as a prophet had more connection to God than Eli the high priest. And so the prophet still has to go to high priest to be able to do certain things. And so here we go. We're now in the book of Judges, and then we go into Ruth, and that's kind of like a little a break in there. But then boom, we fall back into the line in First Samuel, and then in First Samuel 4, the unthinkable happens. The Ark of the Covenant is taken from Israel. And when this happens in First Samuel chapter 4, it's a victory over the Philistines. These little tiny folks that are still around take the Ark of the Covenant. And so when you scroll all the way down in the chapter and you go right towards the end, where it happens, one of the things that happens is the information gets to Eli. And he says, now Eli was 98 years old. His eyes were dim so that he could not see. He was blind spiritually and physically. And I have come from the battle line, says the man, that I escaped. And he's like, how did things go, my son? The messenger replied, Israel has fled before the Philistines. Something that Joshua would be like, what happened, God? What did we do wrong? Let's fix it. And then he goes, the Philistines have been have also there's also been a great slaughter among those. Your two sons have died, and they're dead, and the ark of God has been taken. Now listen to this. When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell off the seat backwards by the side of the city gate. His neck was broken and he died, for he was old and heavy, for years of living off the fat of the burnt offerings. And then it said that he had judged Israel for 40 years. So he was one of those judges. So there were high priests that were in the capacity. But what they brought was falling into deaf ears because the presence of God was gone. They were not ministering in the presence of God. They were probably grabbing the Urim and Tumim that we were talking about, those two stones, and they were casting them as lots. Because then we see what Saul tries to do later on. And he tries to do the same thing. And Samuel then has to come and correct him. So where does Saul get this from? This idea is because by now, the people of Israel, their hearts so far from God, from the understanding of who God is, that literally what they've done now is they've adopted the ideologies of luck and chance from all these other people. And that's how they've been operating because God's presence is gone. And that's how a lot of churches operate today. That's how a lot of ministers and preachers operate today. Sad. Now let's go. What happens here? He dies. He don't even die at the news of his sons dying. His kids died. He did not die from that. He died from realizing that on his watch, the Ark of the Covenant, where God would come and put his Shekinah glory over, is gone. He was useless. That's where I started, didn't I? Now, his daughter-in-law was pregnant. She had a son. She named him Ichabod, which means the glory has left Israel because the ark of God has been taken and because the death of her father-in-law, her husband. The glory has left Israel, for the ark of God has been taken. The glory of God had already left. He told Moses he's not going to be there. Absolutely not. He's holy. And so everything that they've been doing is a tradition. They've just been doing it. Now, what happens next is the people want a king. They don't want a high priest. They don't want to go to what God had already established for them. They want to go to what they've understood is the right way. Just like all the other nations who have God or who have kings. Why can't we have an earthly ruler, the ruler among us, to tell us what to do? And so they've now completely despised and rejected God, who wanted to rule among them as their king. And God gives them Saul. And so with that, brothers and sisters in Christ, I thank you for taking this time. It was more than 5 minutes. Um, but you know, it it has to be brought completely. That's how important this is. And the nation ends up getting divided ultimately into a civil war. When God's presence is gone, the ripples and the depthness of division that comes and takes on a nation are devastating. And we see that. Bring on King Priest. God bless.